Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Paul Gladen, Director of the Blackstone LaunchPad, and I'm joined by Mark Losh, who's Membership Director with the Missoula Chamber, and also by Margit Baake, who's Membership Director for the Kalispell Chamber, but used to have Mark's job after Mark had the same job previously. And then I realized as well it was Mark, then it was Margit, then it was Margot, and now it's back to Mark. So Mark, when you step down, presumably they have to get somebody else whose name starts with MAR, right? It's got to be. We're just going to be a Martin or a Maria.
Keeping the initials the same. It was easier on paperwork.
See, but the thing is, I was living up to him, and now he's living up to me, so it's cyclical.
Yeah, there's even more to this whole circle that would require us to have a pint and tell more, but that's right. Another day.
We'll save that one for another day, exactly. So I appreciate Mark and Margit joining us today. Really, what we thought would be. Mark and Margit are both people I think just do a fantastic job of networking and building relationships. That's clearly kind of the nature of what they do. And I thought in this current environment, and we've talked on some of our other sort of interview series about the importance of sort of reaching out and engaging customers in your business. And essentially in a way, although your membership organizations, sort of your members are sort of your customers as well. So you're such masters of that relationship development process that I thought it would be great to get kind of Mark and Margit's insights on relationship development in general, and then also specifically, how do you go about doing that in this age of kind of physical distancing? So that's what I thought we would talk about. So maybe I'll invite you both to sort of jump in initially with almost sort of what are some of a couple of things that really, when you think about relationship development, what are some principles or some practices that you kind of live by to build those relationships?
That's a deep question that we could spend an hour on, just that one question. I've always fallen back on some principles I learned many, many years ago through Dale Carnegie, that until you understand where the person you're talking to is coming from and what is their desired outcome, it's hard to build that relationship or have that connection. So I really try to find a way to be sitting in their shoes or in their chair or in their boots when I begin the conversation via phone, via email, whatever, and try to find a way to get that first connection, that first tie. They like to cook, I like to cook. They grew up on a farm, I grew up on a farm. Any of those kinds of little things, but not make it sound corny. And then once you start that, you have to have empathy for their position and be genuine in caring what they say and listen to what they say. And if you do those principles, you can just about go anywhere in any platform.
I love it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I usually do my conversations, any conversation really, in a professional sense, based on the 80-20 rule. I let the other person speak about 80% of the time. I ask a lot of questions. The number one way to get people to like you is to show interest in them.
Right.
And that's kind of what Mark was touching on a little bit as well. A former coach and trainer of mine taught me the steamroller method and told me to, especially when I'm speaking with a prospect, making a first impression, to imagine it as a train running on a steam engine. And you want to add a little bit of coal here and there. You want to add a little question. You want to add a little comment. You want to say something like, for example, tell me more, or what do you think about that, or what should be done about that?
Right.
And keep that steamroller going and let them talk as long as they possibly can until they run out of steam. Because the more they speak, the more they're going to like you. And that really is the number one key in sales. I think we're going to get a little bit deeper into this conversation and this topic in the next half an hour. But I think the number one thing when you're connecting, especially when you're connecting with someone new, is don't ever ask for too much. If you think your question might be too much, then don't ask it, especially not at that beginning phase when you're asking to be connected with someone. And the third point that I have noted is connect people even outside your circle. I do that every day in my work. I connect people, and I connect to people that I don't even know, but I help build that bridge for our members and our clients.
Yeah, that's such a principle that I think has really resonated with me over the years. When I first moved to New York, this is back 2001, and then started my own kind of consulting research business in New York, I joined a networking group. I didn't really almost know. It was literally, I found an office to share. the person that I was sharing the office with, she was part of this networking group. He said, "Oh, you should come along." So I kind of learned from them, and their principle was kind of what goes around comes around. So this idea that sort of if you help other people out, you'll have that opportunity to be helped when you need it, but you don't go in with the expectation of kind of looking for the help. And there's also Brad Feld, who's very successful VC investor in Boulder, Colorado, one of the co-founders of Techstars, which is the program that Blackstone LaunchPad is affiliated with. He and his co-founder of Techstars, David Cohen, have a podcast called Give First, which is about that kind of just giving without the expectation of getting back. So, Mark, does that resonate with you?
100%. If someone reaches out to me at the chamber, I want to know what triggered them to do that. What made them call me? What, if any selling, what made them walk in the door? What made them move their position to be vulnerable? Because they're saying, "Hey, I want to talk to you. You're at the chamber." Right. So it's like what made them walk on the car lot is a way to think about it. And there's a desired outcome they're looking for. And my goal is to find out what that desired outcome is before I talk about what we do or who we are. I also want to know what experiences they've had. Hey, thanks for reaching out. What made you reach out to us? Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about that. And like Margit said with this, I want them to tell me everything they know. Have you ever been involved in chamber before? Well, I did before. Great. Tell me, what was that like? Right. What did you not like? Mm-hmm. I want to know right away, what did they not like? What did not work? Those types of things to make sure that I somehow address what didn't work before. I address it so I get that off the table without them needing to say something about it. Absolutely. And really the whole desired outcome. What is it that I can do for you? What is it that you need? And ask that before you begin the selling process, or else you don't know where you're going. So if I can fully understand what your wants are, your needs are, what motivated you to do this, and what your fears are, then I know where not to go into the fears, stay in the positive, and move you to a place where you feel comfortable getting the desired outcome. And in many times, you're not asking them, "Are you ready to give me money to be a member now?" Mm-hmm. It's, "You know what, I think we need to do this. What do I have to do next, Mark?" Right. And when you have that process, now you have a relationship, because that's a trust statement.
That's fantastic. Margit, I mean, I just see you on sort of social media, Facebook, LinkedIn. I mean,
the queen.
This is sort of almost like who you are. But can you maybe kind of talk about some of we sort of talked a little bit about sort of the values and principles, but what are some of the sort of techniques that you use that help you get out there and engage with people and find people to engage with?
Great question. Well, I post a lot on social media, specifically on Facebook, because I know the data, and I know that small business owners are on Facebook, especially in the state of Montana. Mm-hmm. So that's why I choose Facebook. I haven't really gone beyond too much. I do use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is fascinating, and I would love to dive deeper into the tactics of LinkedIn. And for networking at a professional level, I think we can talk about LinkedIn and how it's much more acceptable to reach out to someone you don't know via LinkedIn, and how to do that properly. But I think you could fill hours on that topic alone. But on Facebook, really, my motto is transparency. My friends on Facebook are current members of mine, potential members of mine, friends of mine, family of mine. And people think that you can see my entire life on Facebook, which you can't. You definitely cannot, but that's good. That's what I'm trying to do, right? The other thing is, people think that I work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which often backfires, but that's okay. The benefits outweigh the detriments there. A lot more pros than cons. People feel like I'm accessible 24 hours a day, which can be a bad thing at times. But that's the image that I'm creating, right? I'm producing that. That means I'm being successful at what I'm doing on social media, whether I'm hiking or whether I'm having coffee or a Zoom meeting with a client and a prospect or a prospective member. I do like to show that I'm busy and I'm here for you and I'm working for you 24/7. And people often reach out to me via social media, say, "Hey, who do you know that does XYZ? Or can you connect me with Susie? I know she's a friend of yours. Can you connect us?" So I do a lot of that on social media. But that perceived transparency really works in my favor. So much so that my mom thinks she knows everything that's going on in my life through Facebook. And that definitely is not true. Definitely not true. But Paul, if you could ask me kind of a follow-up question, that'd be great, because I don't know what exactly you wanted me to share on that topic.
Well, I think you're answering it in a way, which is, I think the ideas of being visible, of being accessible, of being sort of transparent, those to me at least seem like kind of things that kind of that resonate. And I think it's interesting, you both sort of talked a little bit, essentially really sort of about sales in a way. And selling sort of gets just such this kind of bad rap in some ways, but actually what you've both articulated, and we do the same in the Launchpad, which when we're working with early stage entrepreneurs, which is my favorite quote in business is from Peter Drucker: the purpose of business is to create a customer, and you create that customer by essentially addressing their need. And that's what you've talked about, is understanding kind of what brought them to you today, or what opens them up to that conversation. So I think, Margit, what you're talking about is by being out there, you're making yourself accessible, the opportunity to have those conversations. It's not about selling, it's about engaging.
Well, and one of the things also is people often say to me, oh my gosh, you are everywhere. The Kalispell Chamber is everywhere. That's great, right? That's what I'm trying to say. But I also, people often ask me for like networking tips or networking advice.
Yes.
And one of the things
I was going to ask you that question, so yes, please go ahead.
Okay. One of the things that I do teach, and the same is true for social media, you just kind of touched on it, is consistency. You have to be consistently available for networking. If I'm in a business that requires networking, for example, sales or any kind of relationship development, real estate, insurance, etc., I can't just go to one networking event, collect business cards, and go home. No, I have to consistently be at the major networking events so that Susie can introduce me to Tom in person, because Susie knows I will be there. So I think consistency in networking is very important, whether it be online or in person.
Right.
I agree with everything. I want to go back to one thing on social media that Margit does so well, is in her transparency, perceived transparency, she's sharing so many different things that Kalispell is doing as a community, that it encourages people to say, I feel like I'm not plugged in. I'm not in that circle. I'm not getting this. I didn't know about this. I need to be involved with this person to be in that circle. And to be involved with this person, I have to be in the chamber. And I think that's one of her biggest strengths, is she creates an energy around her that you can be part of if you join the chamber. Is that a fair statement, Margit?
Yeah, I think so.
The other thing is the word perception. You brought it up 3 different times, and I don't live in a world of facts. I live in a world of perception. And people live in a much more of a perception world than they realize. They'll take a perception, turn it into a fact, to make a decision on now what they think is a fact, but it started as a perception. So I really am conscious. I'm careful of not assuming anything when I'm talking with anyone. And I'm always conscious of, I don't know who they know.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of it goes back to that whole feeling out, asking questions, getting information to find out. Because if you talk to someone long enough in the Missoula area, you're going to find out they know someone who knows somebody who knows you, who knows them. And all of a sudden you now made a connection. And oh my God, you know Paul? Yeah, I know Paul. Oh, and then it changes the entire way they look at you. So the perception is something we really need to think about and be aware of. There's an old statement that there's 35 judgments made about you before you say your first word in the first 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's also a very important thing. And because people think Margit, they see everything about her, they have a very positive perception of her and the chamber and want to be involved in that group.
So I want to, because Margit, you started on kind of the networking piece, and it's been interesting for me because I co-founded with Dawn McGee the Hellgate Venture Network back in 2009, and really did that pretty much by accident. There was no intentional design around that, but it's been a phenomenal experience and kind of opportunity for me. And I would definitely put myself in the category, which may be a difference to the two of you. I do not like walking into rooms of people that I do not know. You may view that as like, this is exciting. I'm like, holy crap. So I now joke, it's like, well, I started my own networking group so I can actually walk into a room where I do know people. But for those that there's a follow-up question. First question is, what is your advice to people that do go to those kind of networking events? How do you engage in that environment? And then in our COVID-19's physically distant environment, how do you do networking when you don't even have those events to go to? And I might suggest, and would love your perspective, maybe actually now is a good opportunity to do that, because you don't have to walk into a room of strangers. You can be more intentional about how you engage. So would love your perspectives on sort of networking, particularly how do you make those sort of first steps?
I'm sure Margit's had this scenario where you have someone who joins your chamber and you say, great, we'd like you to come to the business after hours. I'm going to invite you up. I have a microphone and we're going to introduce everybody. And they go, I have to talk? Well, yes. I don't know how to do that. So then there's a whole coaching program going on of how to get around that. So one of the things that we do is I say, great, I'm going to be standing there with you. I'll hold the microphone. I'll ask you a couple questions. It'll be very easy. Okay. But I have to show up and there's a lot of people there. So then I give them kind of some ideas of how to get around it. First of all, when you walk in the room, take 5 minutes and walk around the outside of the room, just moving. Don't try to connect with anybody. You don't even have to make eye contact if you don't want to. Just walk around the room so you feel the energy of the room. Go find where there is a beverage, be it pop, soda, beer, wine, whatever, and get a beverage. And then go find the food and find something and get 2 or 3 bites of food and eat 2 or 3 bites of food, have a few sips of Coke, Pepsi, water, beer, and now you're in the room. And you should have your breath back. It's been 5 to 10 minutes, and get to a spot where you can see the whole room and watch the crowd as if you're watching a beehive. There's going to be 5 or 6 people that as they move around that room, people move with them like bees. And as soon as you see that person moving, you'll see more people going to that person. So there's one of the connectors in the room. That person knows a lot of people. So then how do you get into front of that connector, being that meeting or the next one? This is a really simple trick. They're going over to that corner of the room. You work the other way around it. And you're about 7 to 8 feet away now. And they start moving that way. And you look over at them and you go, and you give them the head nod and the quick wave, and that's it. And now what happens in the connector's mind is, who is that? They know me and I don't know who they are. God, where did I meet them? Do I know this person? And then you stay in their path, just kind of there, glance up every now and then. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to be able to connect and talk to them and go, have we met someplace? And they'll break the ice for you. And I've seen it work over and over and over again for my new members that are very scared to meet someone. And that's the first way to meet someone. And then after that, it changes. The other advantage is we have red coats at the Missoula Chamber, and I can take someone who's really scared to a red coat and say, hey, this is Cynthia. She's our new member, and she is scared to death right now. This is her first networking event. Can you please help her? And we have a system put in place to work with that. So that was probably long-winded, but that's one of the things that we do.
Great. Margit, what are your tips for doing that?
Well, the tips are a little bit different. I think there's different tips for men and women. For women in particular, a great opening line when you're trying to meet someone or you're trying to make conversation is, hey, I love your scarf, or I love your earrings. Now that's different between men and women, but studies have shown that people do resonate well. They love that when the opening line is some sort of form of a compliment.
Yep.
Also, the newest studies are showing that people are over analyzing the opening question. And the most beloved opening question is, how are you doing? What do you do? Or is this your first time here? Simple questions to open the dialogue. We at our chamber also have connectors. We have designated connectors to help people connect. And the other thing is we have greeters. I think it's all about how people are welcomed at the event. I also always encourage them to bring their husband or their wife or maybe a friend. That way they're not on their own. But I think another thing that to kind of keep in mind is there's different kinds of networking. And for different people, there will be different networking groups that are valuable. So one of the things that I teach folks is you want to definitely go to the larger networking events. The chamber in your community will most likely host the largest networking event. Go to that. And there's a lot of variety in people. Each month you'll see different folks there. Smaller groups might have a higher qualitative level of networking. You'll meet fewer people, but for example, if you're looking for investors, you might find the right people. So be very keep an eye on what kind of event you're going to. For some businesses and some business owners, they need to be at events where they see the same people again and again and again, whereas others need fresh meat. So that's also something to keep in mind.
Yeah, well, that's great advice, great perspective. Yeah, and I certainly always tell people, sort of Hellgate Venture Network, which obviously I'm one of the co-founders of, that if I'm encouraging them to come find me when they walk in, I'll be happy to kind of introduce them to other people there. Let's talk about, how do you do this? How do you build your network in this COVID-19 environment?
I think currently it's who you know already, right? I don't think it's the time to reach out and try to meet new people on your own. I think I would ask a friend to introduce me to a certain person via Facebook Messenger, via email, via phone, via Zoom meeting. I don't think it's the time for cold calling. I don't think it's the time for a cold outreach. If you do need to connect with someone that you have no connections with, there's no people in between, I think LinkedIn is the way to go. A nicely well-written LinkedIn message. But I'm excited to see what Mark has to say on this topic.
I'm still trying to figure it out. I'll be dead honest. What I've been doing recently is someone will say, hey, you should talk to so-and-so. I'll say, great. They don't know me yet. Will you send a quick email to both of us? Just say, hey, John, this is Mark. Mark, this is John. John, I think you and Mark should have a conversation. I'll ask for that. If there's someone I want to meet, I'm going to look them up on LinkedIn, Facebook, find out who they know, see if there's someone I know that knows them, and say, hey, John, I know that you know Paul. Is there any way you give me an introduction? So I'm looking for someone in their warm market to give them an introduction to me, because I'm cold. I'm using this time, the last 6 weeks, 7 weeks, to really reconnect with our current contacts, our current members, and I'm focused on re-cementing and establishing those relationships, and not just assume they're good, because everything is changing in everybody's world daily. And that's been the last 5 weeks my biggest focus. Now, in doing so, they've said, oh, you should talk to so-and-so. They need to be in the chamber. And that's how I've gotten 4 or 5 members last month and a couple this month, well, today. But it's another member who's hearing what we're doing, re-cementing what the chamber's doing, re-establishing that relationship that's already there, and then them saying, you should talk to so-and-so. And that's what has been working with me so far, and then following up on that and establishing a relationship with them, usually on the phone, the text, you beginning the whole starting again. What's your motivation? What's your needs? Going down that path again.
Right. No, I think that's great advice from both of you, and I think resonates with what we've sort of seen and heard discussed on some of these other interviews, that in many ways really focus on your existing kind of relationships, your existing customer base, to really understand what is challenging them right now. What can you do to help them today? Because hopefully, if they're good or have been good relationships for you to now, you've got that trust, you have their willingness to open up to you, but it may well be that their needs are different now from what they were kind of 5 weeks ago. And I actually, Mark, it was sort of part of the trigger for me wanting to set up this conversation today was, I think, the first conversation you and I had, sort of, I think like that first Monday after we it suddenly became, wow, the world is suddenly taking a dramatic change here. And actually, Morgan and I, we had that conversation. It was just scheduled in for you and I to catch up. And I said, well, what's going on? And you said, I'm just calling every single one of our members to understand kind of what's going on in the world. And I think that just really kind of resonated as like, that's what you should be doing. If you've got the time, reach out to your customers and say, what's going on? What can I do? What can I do to help?
And now we're having some of our customers open their doors. In the Missoula, we've got a big campaign, Missoula Strong, we are open, old-fashioned signs. So the last 4 days, I've actually have been out in the field, going into people's offices with my little mask, my Grizz mask, by the way. There we go.
Excellent.
And I'm going to seeing them face to face and using my old-fashioned skill set of communicating face to face, and finding out so much more information, and finding out how many people wanted to have a positive conversation, because it's hard to find a positive conversation. And I've had some people that I've been with 30, 40 minutes, and I can't even tell you what we talked about. I mean, we talked about food and camping and everything, but it was just, can I just have a normal conversation with someone? And they have no one to do that with, is what I'm discovering. Right. So I've made 36 stops in 4 days of seeing members. And that has been more valuable than the last 5 weeks. Now the phone calls were great, love talking to people, but when you can sit down with someone again and re-cement, that's been really valuable. And when this is over with, I think we need to understand that needs to happen again, because people want to have a conversation, they want to talk, and they want to be present.
Cool. Margit, when you and I chatted just briefly earlier this morning, you sort of indicated you felt there was a sort of the nature or the way we go about the conversations is sort of is evolving now in this COVID-19.
Yeah, at first when this all first started, there was almost a hunger to connect with other people, because a lot of the extroverts and networkers came to a screeching halt. So I actually organized some Zoom happy hours with our President's Club here at the Kalispell Chamber, and it was really just the need to connect, right? People were they had no one to talk to outside of their family and outside of their four walls, and they just simply wanted to connect. Our second Zoom happy hour was scheduled to go for about half an hour, 40 minutes was what I thought it would go. It went 2.5 hours, but this was right in the midst of everyone being at home and being stuck at home and not really knowing what to do with your energy, what to do with your thoughts, etc. Now I see, about a month later, I see kind of people are busy again. Their businesses are picking up in some ways, depending on the industry. And we're going back to once a week, and we're having more structured video conferences, and hopefully soon in person again. But I think for a good stint of time there people were just hungry to communicate with others.
Right.
And I think that's what Mark is kind of finding when he's meeting with people face to face, like, wow, someone else to talk to.
Right.
And we had the same thing. We were Zooming our backsides off here with people, and they did go long, and there was nobody to steer the conversation. It just it had its own life once the call started, and we just went with it wherever it was going. And now I can see that starting to back off, and people are making plans and figuring out what am I do here, and it's becoming more strategic conversations in our conversations, and so it's like it's going through steps. It went to the, oh my God, this is happening, then the fear, then the anger. And now it's okay. I see a light at the end of the tunnel. Now, how are we going to do this? And we're going to do this. And now we have a plan. And I think we're in that, we have a plan stage, and people are beginning to have a positive energy.
Right.
And that's the thing that I've seen this week is like, I want to open the doors. Let's go. I'm ready to go get this and get my business going again. So I think people have a renewed energy out there right now. And that's what I saw in the last 5 days.
So there's still a lot of uncertainty around, but the business world always has uncertainty, and there's a lot of it right now. But people now have at least a plan for how they're gonna deal with that.
Yeah, plan. Just having a plan doesn't mean everybody's gonna go walking out in the street without a mask and hug everybody. It's just that there's a plan. Everybody has their own plan. They have their own way they're doing things. Some people are open right away. Some are gonna wait for a whole nother month before they open.
Yep.
But they have a plan, and if they have a plan, then they have a direction. And if someone has a direction, then they have a purpose.
Yep.
And that's the key.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that's consistent with sort of what Morgan and I have heard from some of the other interviews we've done with some of the local businesses here, is that those business owners, those entrepreneurs have been figuring out how to adapt. And it's been pretty awesome, pretty energizing to kind of hear some of those stories. You getting that same sense, Margit, that kind of people are trying to transition themselves into a positive direction?
Oh yeah, people are excited, and as luck would have it, the bars are opening for my birthday on Monday.
Oh, that's fantastic. Right. That's right. We're a week apart. I forgot that.
Well, we wish you a very happy birthday for Monday.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just kind of ironic that the bars and restaurants are opening, but yeah, we are seeing some signs of an upturn, hopefully. But at the same time, we're also seeing headlines about some of our Main Street businesses already saying they have to close. So we'll see. I think we're going to see a wave of optimism, as Mark mentioned, but I also think we need to prepare for a wave of closures.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we've come to the end of our 30 minutes. So is there any kind of closing thoughts that either of you would like to kind of leave us with on this Friday?
Thank you for letting us be here and share. I think these are great programs you're doing. I think that the 9 to 20 different things you're doing in town, Paul, are all quite amazing. You seem to always have a focus on helping business grow, period. And you don't have a selfish attitude about it. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been wonderful, and I think it's a great discussion. One last thought I wanted to share is
Mhm.
I often hear people say, I hate networking, I'm not a networker. I think if you're a genuine person and you're willing to meet people, you could be the best networker ever. So it's something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Networking doesn't necessarily need to be learned.
Right. Yep.
Selling is not selling. Selling is the art of communication and knowing how to
Absolutely.
communicate.
Yeah.
That's, if you're trying to sell, you're going to lose.
Yeah. One of my favorite lines about selling is kind of, because people talk about the close in selling. It's like kind of good selling is when the customer closes. Because the customer said, this is fantastic. This is what I've been looking for. Where do I sign? Or when can you guys
Totally agree.
get started?
Totally agree.
So, yeah, no, I think, as you say, Margit, kind of networking doesn't sort of have to be learned, but it's a great opportunity to learn, right? If you go in, as you said early on, 80-20, spend 80% of the time listening, you're going to learn a whole heap that'll help you, help your business, help your community. So it's a networking is a learning opportunity. So maybe we'll end with that thought on a Friday. So thank you both for sharing your time and your expertise. I appreciate the work that both of you do in your respective communities and in Montana as a whole. So it's really valuable, and we'll look forward to hopefully seeing you in person before too long. And Margit, have a great birthday.
Yes.
All
Happy
right.
birthday.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.